Hello, my name is Okasa, and today we'll be discussing Attack on Titans and Ancestral Veneration. Spoilers ahead. So, I have an old TikTok where I said that Eren is the reincarnation of the king. Well, not exactly. I said that if Ymir is an ancestor that Eldians agree is their common ancestor, and Ymir only had 3 kids by one man, then who else is their ancestor? The king. And this was brought about because of the scene where Eren was doing ancestral work with Ymir, where he was telling her, "You are a human. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to get angry," right? And it was a beautiful scene up until he used that as the catalyst to start a G-side, right? It got me thinking, was this work for Ymir? Is this what Ymir wants? Or is this something that the king, an egomaniacal, narcissistic king, would have wanted? And because I'm hyperbolic, I decided to say Eren is reincarnated. That's what, because you don't see him in the spirit world. You don't see the kids either, but like the princesses, you don't see them either. But I'm just gonna say Eren is just fulfilling the wish of the king. Anyways, it is Capricorn season, so I've been sharing a lot of reflections I have about Saturn and ancestral work and karma because I see them as being connected. You should watch my video on The Grandma is the Baby. I think that's really the groundwork for what I've been discussing, right? But a motif that I have not discussed yet is trees, because trees live longer than humans. So trees watch families from generation to generation to generation grow, be happy, cry, suffer, grow again, right? Like I think about how trees have seen your great-great-grandparents, right? And they're still here today, or they see your great-great-grandparents and then the kids they have, and even the kids that didn't even make it to adulthood. Like trees are, an anchor, a pillar, like foundational structures, like they are anchors. They are strong pillars in the community. And a lot of cultures, a lot of spiritual practices have trees that they do a lot of ceremonies and rituals and weddings and funerals and festivals. And what's another thing? Like they just do a lot of spiritual practices and spiritual rituals under trees. And I would even say a remnant of that today is the fact that we bring Christmas trees into our home. That is a remnant of trees being like divine symbols in people's culture. And something that I have been thinking is how even if you don't believe in spirituality, you can probably find like the same ideas that I'm expressing in science. Like I have said that I see magic and science as the same thing. Magic is science that has yet to be explained. And something that I have been thinking about is that when you cut down a tree, when you cut down a sacred tree specifically, that is a physical assault to the community, right? Because it's a symbol that has unified a community, right? But then it's also a spiritual attack. And you can see this in the fact that if a tree has been here for so long that it becomes like a core, or like it becomes the center of an ecosystem, because the root work, I keep saying root work and I keep forgetting that root work is a type of, I think, hoodoo or voodoo practice, but I don't know much about that. But like the roots of our vegetation, they interact with each other and they share information and resources amongst each other. And if you have a tree that's been here for thousands of years, it becomes the most stable, pivotal, like center of the ecosystem because it's the most stable. It's been here the longest. It's the most reliable. And when you cut that down, you pretty much tank or you attack or you destabilize an ecosystem and things fall apart. And I think the first sign that America was going to have trouble was when they started doing mass deforestation. Because when we think about forests in America, we think of the West. But in reality, we used to have forests like the West all over America. And it wasn't until like the 1920s when we realized, oh, we cannot just keep cutting down, deforesting without like having a plan. And in fact, I personally find the Dust Bowl to be I find the Dust Bowl to be a retaliation of the land, like trees and land. The concept of deforesting was like the first problem. Then the second problem was killing of native people. And when I said that trees have seen generation to generation and generation, lands have seen generation from generation to generation. They have lived with them. They have coexisted with them. They have loved them, right? And for a foreigner, Europeans, to come into America specifically, in this example, to come into America and annihilate their native people that they have loved for generations, they annihilate them, right? That would hurt the land as well. That would break the land's heart. And then actually, it has to do with Canaanites too, but that's loaded. But then on top of deforestation, killing native populations, because the foreigners came into the land and they did not get married or they did not assimilate or they did not learn how to coexist with the people who know the land, right? The way that trees know generations to generations, they know that family. Those families also know the land. They know how to the best coexist with the land because they killed the people who know the information about that. Unallied the people. I don't know. I'm just going to say whatever. They didn't have the knowledge to live on the land, and they did bad farm practicing, and that led to the Dust Bowl. And something that I feel like a lot of people, like, they don't see the correlation, but I think I see the correlation. Maybe I'm reaching, because it could also have been that they were just paying attention to the scientists saying that, hey, we've made a couple of mistakes. When we started doing conservation acts, when we started conserving, when we started making national parks where we made rules, we made laws that it's illegal to cut certain trees that are too old. Like, it is now a law in America that if you cut certain trees, you will go to jail or you get a fine because you're not supposed to cut any old tree. Old trees are sacred. They just are. Even now, like, legally, they are sacred, right? That was happening during the Dust Bowl. It was like Teddy Roosevelt, or one of the Roosevelts, was dealing with the Dust Bowl. They were dealing with the Great Depression. They were dealing with World War I or II knocking on their door. They were dealing with a lot. I think it was World War I. They were dealing with a lot. And I think it was the fact that they destabilized their economy. They destabilized their land by deforesting. That was the first one. Then maybe even the second one is the fact that they were attacking Native people. And this is even like a common trope. They will deface like Native population, like sacred symbols of Native populations. Like, another example is Mount Rushmore. That is a defaced sacred symbol for like the Lakota people. Like, it is just a symbol of, if you don't respect the people, you don't respect the land. And if you don't respect the land cannot sustain you. And this is where I wanted to throw, I think the main reason why I feel like this is because I have been so lucky to go back to Kenya. My parents are Kenyan. I am Kenyan American. And no diss to America, but I just know that my body is a collage of Kenyans, people who have lived on that land for like thousands of years, right? So my body adapted. And this does connect to karma. Like, karma, I think sometimes because I've said that it has wheel imagery. And I think sometimes people think it's like a hamster in a wheel where it's just stagnant and we're just moving. But personally, I do think it is wheel, like a real wheel that is turning while it's circulating. Personally, and I think when you think of karma, it is progression. It is slow progression. And I personally see it as pretty slow. Like, when you really think of like how far, like, let's say civil rights. When we think of how long it took for us to have civil rights, and even today we really don't have civil rights, it's like the progression of reality it's progressing. I cannot say that we're in the 1800s, but is it progressing the way that we thought it? Is it progressing as fast as we wish it? No. But anyways, karma is progression. And I think a concept of progression is evolution or evolving. My people evolved with the land to be able to survive on that land in Kenya, right? My body is designed to live in Kenya. I am a collage of people who lived in Kenya. In the same way that my ancestors' bodies gradually evolved, gradually adapted to the environment, I think that land also adapted to sustain life. Specifically, my family that has been there for generations. They know my family, right? When you come into a situation, no one knows each other, but you're trying to make this work and you're forcing it. It's coercion. But anyways, how does this connect to AOT? I feel like I finished my point, but I might come back to it another day. But how does this connect to AOT? There are a lot of tree motifs in AOT. Ymir, the ancestor that got the first Titan, I think it's a virus, but it also looks like a mother vinegar to me. But like the mother Titan, Ymir, she enters a tree, she falls in the tree, and then she gets attached to the virus. That is the birth of the first Titan, right? The beginning of Aaron's story starts with him waking up under a tree. Spoiler, the end of Aaron's story is his severed head being buried under that same tree, allegedly, but he's buried under a tree. The end of that story is a boy. Well, do I want to explain that? Okay, let me just say this part and then we'll go back. A boy walking up to that same tree that's been there for generations, potentially completing, revamping that cycle again. And this is where I'm like, this is karmic, this is ancestral. Ymir is the first Titan. She suffered. Technically, Aaron is a Titan and he has suffered, but the type of suffering that he's experienced is not the same as Ymir. You could potentially say that Aaron is in a better place than Ymir was. However, he technically did, some people do think he might be in a karmic cycle, or he's in a loop. And what's the difference between a loop and a cycle, right? When he woke up under the tree, it was like he had a bad dream, and the bad dream was his whole life. So it's like he reaches his death and then he wakes up again. So he's in a loop, right? So karmic cycles being that hamster wheel, right? And it might be that little boy coming to that tree that's going to break that cycle. But technically, often when you try to break karmic cycles, you end up repeating them. And especially since Aaron was just like, I don't want to be, I think he is considered an oppressed population. So in his mind, he was like, if I kill everyone, I'll be free. And that's not the case, because one, he failed to kill everyone. But then this is something that I always say, or my mother always said, and then I had to adopt it. There will always be remnants. There will always be people that will, like, it is just common. It's just like humanity, where it's like you have a unified identity, but then something's going to divide y'all, and it becomes such a major issue that now y'all are like two separate identities, and y'all war and clash with each other, and then someone succeeds over the other. So now you're the dominant population, and this is the minority population, right? And then you bicker and you fight or whatever, and maybe you'll overcome them, and then they get, right? And then you're the only identity, but then it happens again. You separate, you have war, and then maybe this time, this identity. But there's always a remnant. And what I wanted to say was the black dude who was in where are they? They're not in Marley or wherever they are. There was a black dude on the island away from the rumbling. He would be considered a remnant. He would know there were people, there was a whole continent that looked exactly like him. His whole people group was eradicated. And if he has children, regardless of if technically those kids are considered Eldian because he coupled up with an Eldian, they are not Eldian like the rest of everyone is Eldian. And actually, I'm gonna come back to that because that's like my last point. But yeah, when you try to stop karmic cycles, you end up repeating them. And especially since he was like, I'm doing a war to end all war. And then the last panels of that story is that they built society up, and then it gets destroyed through war. And then they built society up again, and then it gets destroyed by war. That is just like when I was talking about how karma is also the polarization, the back and forth of polarization, because karma makes the world go round, and there needs to be some type of tension, something to pull to make it rotate. Conflict is not always bad, but I feel like in the case of war, we don't need war, but like conflict makes the world go round. You cannot just be, if we were just complacent and comfortable all the time, things would not advance. We have to push the boundaries. We have to keep going forward. And that can be, there will be resistance. The fact that you have to push means that there's a resistance. The fact that like there's energy, there's force, you are doing work. I didn't really do well in physics, but I play with physics concepts with my astrology all the time. I was also the same girl who I heard gravity is a theory. And I went, gravity isn't real, but gravity is real. It's the theory, like how to calculate gravity is a theory. I'm gonna still say gravity is a theory every once in a while, even though I use gravity in my astrology to explain my astrology all the time. But blah, blah. But yeah, karma and karmic cycles and trying to defeat them. I think I finished my point. Yeah. So this was me discussing Attack on Titan. However, I just want you to know that I don't think that this is even half of all the musings or all the motifs that I see in Attack on Titan. However, I have a broken laptop that I am really trying to fix. So if you want to help me, I think you should follow. No, like I'm actually showing you my broken laptop. It has a lot of scripts that I want to share. So I would love if you would like, follow, share, comment, help me grow my channel so that I can monetize, so then I can fix my laptop. I can pay to fix my laptop with my other scripts. I'll give you a couple of sneak peeks of things that I have not discussed, which I was supposed to discuss, but I was like, no, I feel like what's in my script is better than what I can come up right now. I did not even touch the zombie motifs in this TV show because they're eating people, right? And how that connects to the original origin of zombieism, which is voodoo, which is enslavement. And then on the topic of enslavement, Ymir is not Eldian the way that king is Eldian. And I find it interesting. Like it's one of those examples of like how we identify race today is not how other people would identify race back in the day. But that's just a sneak peek. If you want more, you need to help me. That's just a little song. But yeah, I feel like that's everything. Revere your community, revere your ancestors, revere your land. Don't just think that everything is connected. And I really do think that's like an example. I think I gave a really good, I just love to talk. So that was supposed to be a good ending, but I got one more thing to say. Everything is connected. Our media is a reflection of us. And when I see the concept of deforestation led to native populations dying, led to lack of knowledge of how to live on the land, because the people who've been living here all the time, who have that knowledge, were no longer there to share that knowledge, it led to the Dust Bowl. It has led to major problems today. When we think, oh, like actually, one of the motifs that I have, but it's in another script, not the AOT script, is how I personally think, well, everything's karmic, but I think the concept of the polarization of summer and winter and the fact that we have climate change, we are playing with our balance. We are playing with our karmic balances, with our karmic cycles. It is so bad. And when you do not revere your land, when you are literally an animal, like at the end of the day, like I know we're human, we have intellect, we have consciousness, but you are an animal. If you cannot remember that you are a part of this land, it gets real bad. But Attack on Titans, I would tell you to watch it, but if you're not media literate, don't, because you will go down some pipeline. Okay, bye.